how are y'all doing? I want to welcome y'all to our virtual summer reading program. I'm Miss Terry, and I'm with DeSoto Parish Library with Logansport Branch. And our theme this summer is Imagine Your Story. And you'll be hearing some fairy tales, folk tales, fables, mythology, and lots of other fun stories. Now, as y'all know, we're having to do this a little different this year, but just bear with us and we'll get through it, and it'll be lots of fun. So y'all can watch, pick up activities at all your local branches and join in the fun at the end of our stories. So let's get with it and have some fun. Okay, hey, how are y'all doing today? I'm Miss Terry, and our first book today is going to be Paula and the Pandemic by Dorothea Lawrence. I just thought I'd throw this in since we have been going through a pandemic. Y'all have been missing school and not be able to go anywhere. So let's get started. Paula lived in a red brick house with a bright red door. The bright yellow door was always open for friends to come in and play. Paula was especially happy when her best friend Ben came over to play. Paula didn't see Ben in a while. Where was Ben? Paula went outside. She saw him at the window of his house. I can't play with you, Paula. My daddy says we need to stay home so Granny won't get sick. Paula had other friends to play with, but she really missed Ben. The next day, Mommy closed the bright yellow door. I'm sorry, Paula. We have a pandemic. A pandemic means that many people are sick and many more will get sick. You can't play with your friends for a little while, and if we all stay home, less people will get sick. Daddy started working from home, but he couldn't play with Paula, and Mama looked worried all the time. Paula was sad, and she felt very alone. She missed her friends. She missed her school teacher. She missed the big blue slide in the park, but most of all, she missed Ben. Paula didn't like the pandemic at all. Then one morning, Mommy gave Paula a tiny seed. Together they dug a hole in the backyard and put the seed inside. They covered it with soil. We need to take good care of our seeds, said Mommy. First, it will seem like the plant will never grow. But if we're patient and water it and protect it from weeds, it will grow to be a big, strong plant. It's the same with the pandemic. It'll take a long time, and we'll think that it will never be over and that we'll never be able to play with our friends. But if we take good care of ourselves and we keep waiting, our community will grow back big and strong. So Paula liked watering her seed. It seemed like nothing was happening for a long, long time. But guess what? One day, Paula saw a tiny little sprout with one green leaf. Paula smiled. Hello, little plant. Paula is not alone, and all these houses are children waiting for the end of the pandemic. And if we're all patient, it will be over before we know it. The end. Now, my next book is Rapunzel. I told y'all in my intro that we'll be doing fairy tales and fables, and this is a fairy tale, an old fairy tale, and this is one of my favorites. And it's also a Caldecott book, which means it's an honor book. Long ago, there lived a man and a woman who had no children. As year followed year, this was their only sorrow. Then one spring, the wife felt her dress growing tight around her waist. Joyfully, she said to her husband, "We're going to have a child at last." The wife liked to sit at the window at the back of their house and look down into a beautiful garden. Flowers grew there, rare fruits and herbs of every kind. The garden belonged to a sorceress who had enclosed it on all sides with a high wall. No one ever dared to enter. One day, as the wife sat by the window, her eyes fixed on the bed of Rapunzel. The herb looked so luxuriant, so green and thick and fresh, that she felt a terrible longing to taste it. So day after day, her craving grew until she began to suffer from it. She became pale and wretched and said to her husband, "If I can't eat some of the Rapunzel from the garden behind the house, I'm going to die." So her husband was alarmed to hear such desperate words. He loved his wife dearly, but he saw no choice but to bring her some of the Rapunzel. 10 times, 20 times, he circled the garden wall, but found neither door nor gate. So lowering himself through the window at the back of the house, he climbed down into the sorcerer's garden, quickly pulled up as much Rapunzel as he could hold, and scrambled back up through the window. His wife made a salad of the roots and greens and devoured it with a wild hunger. So intensely delicious was the taste that she nearly fainted as she ate. Yet the next day, her craving for Rapunzel was even more fierce than ever. Once again, the husband made his way down the wall and into the garden. But this time, he reached for the Rapunzel, and the sorceress rose up before him. "How dare you come to steal my Rapunzel?" she cried. "Oh, it will serve you ill." "Have mercy on me," the man begged. "My wife is carrying our child. She has seen your Rapunzel from her window and conceived such a longing for it that she will die unless she can eat some. What am I to do?" The sorceress considered his words. "If what you say is true, you may only take the Rapunzel you need, but in return, you must give me the child that your wife will bear." That frightened the husband. He didn't know what to say. Rather see his wife die? He agreed to the demand. But when the child was born, the sorceress appeared in the room. She named the baby girl Rapunzel and carried her away. The sorceress cared for the baby, seeing to her every need. Rapunzel grew to a child of rare beauty, with pale skin and abundance of flowing red gold hair. When she reached the age of 12, the sorceress led her into the forest to live in a high tower. The tower was a great column rising in the middle of the woods. Although it looked narrow on the outside, on the inside it was large with many elegant rooms. Yet no door led into the tower, and this only window was at the very, very top. When the sorceress wished to enter, she stood below the window and she called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let your hair down." And Rapunzel would slowly unpin her hair and lower it down to the ground. The sorceress would grab hold of it and she would lift herself up. For years, Rapunzel lived alone in her room above the treetops, visited only by the sorceress. Then one day, a king's son came riding through the woods. As he neared the tower, he heard a voice sweeter than any he had ever known. It was Rapunzel singing in the forest to the forest birds. Charmed by her voice, the prince fell deeply in love. He circled the tower 10 times, 20 times, and found no entrance. "How strange this tower is," he said to himself, and he felt he would die of sadness. He inquired at the nearest house, where he was told that the tower belonged to a sorceress who was keeping a young girl shut away. Day after day the prince returned, hoping to glimpse the girl whose singing had moved him so. One morning he saw the sorceress appear below the window and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let your hair down." And at once the prince knew how he too might enter the tower. The next evening he stood under the window and he called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let your hair down." The king's son took hold of the hair and pulled himself up. "Heaven preserve me," cried Rapunzel when the prince stepped through the window, for she had never set her eyes on a man before. But as he began to speak to her in such a friendly way, her fear was gone. "Your singing was beautiful," the prince told her. "That I knew I must see your face, or my heart could have no peace." Rapunzel saw that he was young and handsome. In her own heart, she felt a happiness that she had never known. And when the prince grown old proposed to marry her, there she consented. They held a ceremony in the tower, and every evening he returned. The sorceress, who came only by day, knew nothing of the visit. One day when the sorceress entered the tower, Rapunzel said, "If you please, stepmother, help me with my dress. It is growing so tight around my waist, it doesn't fit me anymore." Instantly the sorceress understood what Rapunzel did not. "You wicked child, what do I hear you say? I thought that I kept you safe and away from the whole world, but you betrayed me." In a rage, she seized the braids of Rapunzel's silky hair and sheared them off. Then she sent the miserable girl to a wild country to live alone and no one to care for her. After some months in the wilderness, Rapunzel gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. One day, someone had cast Rapunzel out of the tower. Once the sorceress had cast Rapunzel out of the tower, she gathered the cut-off hair, fastened it to the window. That evening, when the prince called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let your hair down," she let the hair cascade down. The poor prince pulled himself up to the window, only to be confronted by the sorceress, her eyes wild with fury. "So you have to come to fetch your dearest darling? Well, you shall not see her again," Rapunzel said. "She is lost to you forever." Struck through grief, the prince let go of the braid and he plummeted to the ground. Although the fall should have killed him, the prince lived. His eyes were hurt and he could no longer see. After years of wandering in such misery, he came into the wilderness where Rapunzel was living with her children. There one day he heard a voice so dear to him that he rushed toward it. Rapunzel saw him and opened her arms, weeping. As Rapunzel embraced the prince, two of her tears fell into his eyes. Suddenly the vision grew clear. Once again the prince could see. He gazed at Rapunzel and at their two beautiful children. He looked up at the hills, beyond the rocky landscape, and knew that he was not lost. The prince led his family out of the wilderness toward his kingdom, where they received the great joy. The end. Okay, we have one more. The King and the Seed by Eric Maddern. King Karnak was worried. He looked at the mirror one morning and he saw an old man staring back at him. His eyes cornered with crow's feet. No doubt about it, he didn't have long for this world. He had another worry too. He and his wife had never been blessed with children. Now, sadly, the queen had died and the king had no heir. It was causing him sleepless nights. So he had a good thing and finally came up with an idea. The king sent out a proclamation: "Let anyone who wants to be king after me come to the palace and take part in a competition." A wave of excitement rippled through the land. The knights and nobles thought they were in with a chance. The competition was bound to be a tournament. They would fight each other in a single combat on horseback with lances and swords. Whoever was the best fighter would become the next king. It was as simple as that. Or so they thought. So they set about sharpening their swords, polishing their armor, and doing their press-ups, practicing hard for the long day. On the day of the competition, hundreds of lords and nobles, splendidly arrayed in armor and riding handsome horses, gathered outside the castle. Their weapons glinted in the sun. They bustled about, jostling and talking in loud voices. But there was one colorful crowd who wasn't a lord or noble, who didn't have a horse or armor. This was Jack. He was a farmer's son. He lived near the castle. He hadn't come to be king. He just loved excitement and wanted to see what was going on. Suddenly the king crier ordered everyone to leave their horses and weapons outside and enter the castle courtyard. A great grumbling arose from the nobles, who felt cheated at their tournament. They traipsed around the castle, muttering and complaining. The crier shouted, "Form an orderly quad! An orderly quad!" The knights and nobles didn't form orderly quads. They pushed and shoved people around. This was the king, and they had to do what he said. So they huffed and they puffed, forming a ragged line. Then the king pulled a pouch from his cloak and took out something very small. It was a seed, and he said, "I'm going to give each of you a seed. I want you to take it away, and I want to see what you can grow from it. Come back in 6 months and show me what you've grown. I'll decide then who will be king after me." There was a rumble of protest. Grow a seed? That was peasants' work. These knights wanted a proper manly fight. They didn't want to grow seeds, but if that meant they could be king one day, hey, they'll grow a seed. So one by one, they took their seed from the king. Jack was watching, and being a farmer's boy, he knew all about growing seeds. He joined the line, and he got his very own seed. Back at home, Jack found a little pot. He filled it with compost, pressed in the seed, and watered it. He knew some seeds liked the dark, so he put it in a warm cupboard. Each day he checked for a telltale little green sprout, but nothing came up. So he put it on the window ledge in the sunshine. He watched it and watered it every day. Still, nothing grew. Then he stopped watering, but it made no difference. It needs strong manure. So he scraped up some rooster poo from the chicken shed. That would do the trick, but a week later, nothing. Still, no sprout. 2 months passed. Jack's seed still hadn't sprouted. He tried everything. He even talked to it. He sung to it. He was desperate. So he climbed on the roof. He put the pot next to the chimney. Warm and sunny here, he thought, but still, nothing grew. Finally, he took the pot to the forest, thinking the seed might like trees all around it. It didn't make the slightest difference. After 3 months, Jack gave up. His seed would never grow. When the day for showing the plants came, Jack wasn't going, but his family had said he tried very hard and he should go, just to see how it turned out. So he did, and he tucked under his coat his little pot and with his seed that he loved so much. Outside the castle, the lords were preening like peacocks, eager to show off the blossoms and blooms that they had grown from the king's seeds. There were roses and poppies and hollyhocks, marigolds, lilies, sunflowers, and chrysanthemums. It looked and smelled like a garden come June. When the trumpet sounded, the lords bustled to the courtyard, proudly displaying their beautiful plants. This time they didn't have to ask to line up. There, sulking in the shadows, were Jack and his little pot with nothing in it but half filled with compost. The king walked onto the podium. The crowd hushed. The first lord stepped up, presented his wondrous flower. The king examined it and said, "Very good, thank you. Next." The second lord stepped up, received the same response. "Yes, very good, thank you. Next." And so it went on. Everyone who came up, the king said the same words. "Yes, very good, thank you. Next." Well, Jack was not going up, for he had nothing to show. But suddenly, when the line had dwindled almost to nothing, someone pushed him forward, and he found himself in front of the king. "I'm very sorry, Your Majesty. I couldn't grow the seed you gave me. I tried everything." He began to move away from the king's strong gaze, but a royal hand clapped him on the shoulder. "What's your name, boy?" "Jack, my lord." "Jack, you have done well." "Well, my lord, but I grew nothing from that seed." "Jack," chuckled the king, "I don't know where those knights got their wonderful flowers from, but they weren't from those seeds I gave them. You see, I boiled those seeds for an hour before I gave them to them. Now, not one of them should have sprouted." Jack's head started to spin. "Jack, of all the contenders, you are the only one with the courage and honesty to tell me the truth. And courage and honesty is what I'm looking for in the person who will be king after me. So, Jack, I declare you my heir and my successor. Jack was stunned. You could have knocked him down with a flower. To tell the truth, he wasn't even sure if he wanted to be king. Luckily, the old king lived a few years more, giving Jack time to get used to the idea and learn some kingly arts, such as how to ride a horse, how to speak in a loud voice. Finally, the old king died, and Jack was crowned in his place. King Jack, the first King Jack, the only. And King Jack was not just brave and honest, he loved nature too. He loved seeing things grow. So soon flowers and forests were springing up everywhere. Nature came into cities. People went out to nature. Many of the lords even hung up their swords and picked up garden forks instead. Best of all, when the King Jack saw how many people loved growing things, he set up a royal flower show, a kind of flower tournament for everyone to display what they grew. And so it has continued from that day to this. The end. Okay, and for your activity today, we are going to plant sunflower seeds. If you came and picked up your packets from the library, you can go to any local branch and pick up your packets for activities. You have a pink moss cup, you've got soil, and you've got 3 mammoth sunflower seeds. Plant them, watch them grow, put them outside, and enjoy them. Thank you.